Hi, year seven. How are we doing? I hope you're all keeping well, keeping on top of your work, keeping yourselves safe. I've lost count of what lesson we're on. I think it's lesson six if you include the quiz you did a couple of lessons ago. There should be lesson six of your working from home stuff with history. We're coming to the end of this module on the Norman Conquest. Now, we might have one more lesson on it before we move on. Apologies, I've forgotten what part of the sentence I was in. I had to remove my dog from the room which I'm recording this in, so I've no idea what I was talking about then. Yeah, we might have one or two more lessons on this Norman conquest topic. I don't know yet. We might move on to the Middle Ages and the Tudors. I don't know. We'll see. There might be a bit of another quiz for you to do on Firefly. Obviously, it doesn't apply to you guys if you're watching this and completing this, but obviously it's important to, get it out there to you that we are sort of monitoring who is and isn't doing the work, and if you're not clicking complete on Firefly, and if you're not putting little attachments of your work on, and I've got no evidence you've done the work, then obviously I've got to ask questions as to have you done the work, have you got any evidence or not. So that's where we are at the minute. We're going to do this today, and then we'll see where we are after this, and we might do another lesson on this topic, I don't know. But your title, so get some paper please, get a pen, and get yourself comfortable. It shouldn't be a massive lesson, this, to be honest. I'm not too sure. I'm hoping it isn't. I do apologise if my lessons take a bit longer than usual. You know I do like to rabbit on and talk. So we'll try and get through this as rapidly as we can, and then you can go and take care of your other subjects. So we're just going to start with a little quiz. So your title's How Much Did the Normans Change England? Today, if you remember when we were in school, we looked at Anglo-Saxon society and then we looked at Norman society. So what England was like before the Norman conquest of 1066 and then what it was like after the conquest of 1066. And it was a bit different. And today we're really going to look what changed and what stayed the same, and how much change was it, or was it mostly the same sort of country? That's the question we're going to answer today. So write your title down. If you want to put the date, pretend you're at school, that's absolutely fine. It's up to you. As I've said before, there's sort of a couple of ways in which I would advise you to deal with your work. Number one, you put them in a folder. If you finish your work today, you put it in a folder, then you bring it in and you show me what you've done, and I say great. Your second option is you take a photo of it as soon as you've done it, and then you reply to this Firefly task I've sent this on with a photo of your work, and then it's saved on my Firefly. So when we go back into school and I say, right, child, whoever, I wouldn't call you child, but you know what I mean, child, whoever, where's your work? And you say, sir, I sent it to you on Firefly. I can go in the task and then I can see what, and I can save it somewhere. As I say, guys, if I'm not seeing evidence that you're doing the work for a number of weeks, then I've got no evidence that you're keeping up with the rest of your class. And when we come back, everyone else in your class has done the work. And I'm not really talking to you guys of this, but maybe if you've got mates who aren't doing the work, it might be worth mentioning to them. If they're not doing the work, it's not that I'm annoyed or angry. It's just the fact I'm worried they're falling behind the people who are doing the work. And then we come back and it's catch-up season. And ideally, when the school's open again, I want us to hit the ground running at having done this work. So maybe, mention it to your mates that they should be doing the history work. Anyway, there's 3 questions for you in front of you now. Do you need to write the questions down? Probably. If you can't be bothered, writing full sentences. But I want the names of the 3 battles of 1066. Sorry, I've drawn on it. I meant to point. That's question number 1. There are 3 of them. We did them again. We watched videos on them before, just before school closed. But if you can't remember, feel free to Google. But see if you can remember. One's obviously the main battle where William becomes king. There were 2 before that. Can you remember what they were? Second one, we did this as an online lesson. You might forget because it was like before Easter. Name one problem William faced after becoming king. So William became king, but he had loads of stuff to sort out. Can you name one of those things? And finally, William ended up attacking the north of England in a horrendous attack in 1069. What was the name of that event? The word north is a hint. So if you could pause it, have a go. It doesn't matter if you get them wrong. I'm not fussed, but have a go at them, and then we'll see where we are, and I'll go through the answers in a second. So pause it and have a go, please. Okay, hopefully you've had a go at those. So, question number 1 was your 3 battles. So there were 3. You had the first one was the Battle of Fulford. And if we remember, that was between Harold Hardrada and the Earls of Northumbria and Mercia, whose names were Edwin and Morcar. So Harold Hardrada and his Viking lads, they came over and they invaded, and Edwin and Morcar went to fight him. And Harold Hardrada won at Fulford. So then, the English king, Harold Godwinson, marched up north. Remember, Harold Godwinson had been chosen as the king after the death of Edward the Confessor. Harold Godwinson marched north, and then he defeated Harold Hardrada and killed him at another battle. So well done if you remember the name of this battle, which was the Battle of Stamford Bridge. Now, usually football fans are quite good at remembering that one because it's the name of the Chelsea ground, but Battle of Stamford Bridge. So, Hardrada won that one. Godwinson beat Hardrada at this one. And finally, the most famous of them all is the Battle of Hastings, where William of Normandy beat Harold Godwinson and became William the Conqueror. Good. Number 2, name one problem William faced after becoming king. So we need one problem William faced. They can choose a lot. Number 1, he had to control London. He had to go and take over London. He had to take a castle at Dover to get back to Normandy to get supplies over. Another one, the country wasn't loyal to him. So England at that time wasn't loyal to William. I mean, he was a French, well, what we would call French. So France didn't exist back then. But he was a king who didn't really speak English, who had no real links to England, who'd now come over and killed what people thought was their rightful king. So, you know, he had to go and take London. He had to get this castle out the way in Dover because that was blocking his route back to Normandy to get supplies and more men over. Or he had to get people on his side because they didn't like him at the time massively. What was the name of the event where William attacked the north of England? Very easy. Harrying of the North. If you don't know what that is, it means you didn't do my last lesson, so go do it. So you're aware, you might have missed 1 or 2 lessons, and that's fine if stuff happened or you'd be, whatever. I'm not really fussed when the lessons are done, as long as they get done. Now, I am archiving tasks 2 weeks after they have been due for. So if the lesson was due on, what's the date today? It is the 27th. So in 2 weeks' time, I'm going to set this due in for a week today. So basically, you've got 3 weeks to get the task done. A week until it's due, and then 2 weeks after it's due, it will get archived. So a week today will be the 4th of May. Oh, wow. We're already in May. And then on 2 weeks after that is the 18th of May. This task will get archived and then won't show up on your Firefly then. If you get... I'm still right. We're 8 minutes in. We haven't even done the start on Mr. Baker. You're rabbiting on again. All the tasks are on the History Firefly page. You'll see a link at the top, like work from home, year 7, and everything's on there, including the quiz and all 5 online lessons I've recorded for you. Then they'll all get updated. So there's always somewhere where you can get the lessons from. Right, let's move on. Now, this one, you might struggle with a little bit. I want you to do as much as you can. It's a matching the keywords to the definition exercise. Now, if we're in class, I'd have this for you and I'd print it out and you'd just draw the line. Unfortunately, I cannot drive to everybody's house and give them a printed out sheet of paper with the definitions on, which is a darn shame. But what is going to have to happen is you're going to match up the keywords to the definitions. Now, how many are there? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. There's 12. Try and write all 12 down for me, guys. Might take you a bit of time. You can shorten these down a little bit if you want. So you don't need to write all of them. But go through. We'll do the first one together. Saxons. Were the Saxons a religious institution? No. Was it the name of the Viking king of Norway? No. Was it the act of crowning the king or queen? No. Tribe that came to England from Europe in the 5th century. That's what the Saxons were. So if we put 1 there, and then, well, I'll just draw a line. It'll probably get quite messy. But yeah. So we'll do Sutton Hoo together as well. Sutton Hoo. Was it a religious institution? You might not know what Sutton Hoo is. You might want to go Google it. It's really, really famous and really interesting. Was it the name of a Viking king? No. Was it the act of crowning a king? I've drawn that to the wrong one. I've just realised. Sorry, folks. Was it the act of crowning a queen or king? No. William's destruction of the North? No. A king or queen? No. A hierarchy? No. A council of wise men? No. A wooden and earthen castle? No. An embroidery created under the orders of Bishop Odo? No. A weak soldiers in the Saxon army? No. The name of a famous Anglo-Saxon burial site? Yes. So, in fact, I'm just going to write the number. I'm going to number to make this more neat. I'm going to write the number next to each one, and then next to the definition I'm going to write the number that one matches up with when I go through it. So we know that 1 went to there. In fact, we'll write it over on this so there's more space. So 1 went to there and 2 went to there. Guys, if you could spend 5 or 10 minutes, if it's getting any more than that because you're struggling and you're having to Google every one, then don't worry, we'll go through the answers. But give it a go, see how many you can get independently. I'd offer a merit out to the person who does it quickest, but there's no way of me being able to judge that. Maybe you want to film yourself doing it and send that back in, but that's up to you. So pause it, have a go, then we'll go through the answers in a minute and see how many we got right. Okay, lovely. Thanks for having a go at that for me, folks. If you have just sat there waiting for me to give you the answers, don't do that, because that's silly and boring. You haven't learned anything, you might as well not be bothering. But anyway, hopefully most of you, all the ones, I will say quickly, guys, I do appreciate those of you get the task done nice and quick and put photos on and do the task. I do appreciate how seriously you're taking it, and it'll stand you in good stead moving forward. Right, a monastery, a religious institution, yeah, a monastery, you should know, it's where monks and nuns live, basically, or monks and nuns live in a convent, but a monastery is where the monks live. And in those days, a monastery, I apologise if you can hear my dog barking, by the way, I kicked him out of the room, but you might be able to hear him through the door. So in those days, most people who could write and read books were monks. The Witan, now hopefully you remember this one. Was it the name of a Viking king? No. Was it the act of crowning a king or queen? No. Was it William's destruction? No. Was it a king or queen? No. Was it a hierarchy introduced by the Normans? No. Was it a council of wise men who would advise the king of Anglo-Saxon England? You're darn right it is. So, number 4 is there. Monarch. Was it the name of the Viking king? No. Was it the act of crowning the king or queen? No. Was it William's destruction of the North? No. Was it a king or queen? Yeah. A monarch's just another word, folks, for a king or queen. So, Queen Elizabeth today, she is a monarch. Harold Hardrada. Was he the name of a Viking king? Yes. Begins to get a bit easy now. The Bayeux Tapestry. Now, this, guys, was I think I mentioned it. I'm sure I mentioned it in class. At least to some of you. It was basically William the Conqueror. His brother, was it half-brother? I think it was half-brother. Was called Bishop Odo. And he basically, he paid for this massive stitched, it's like a wallpaper almost. And it tells the story of the Battle of Hastings and everything from the start to the end. And it's done from the Norman angle, so it's presented as if William's like the good guy and he's the superhero and Harold Godwinson's the naughty bad man, and that's how it's presented. So let's go through which one matches with them. The act of crowning a king or queen? No. William's destruction of England following a rebellion? No. Hierarchy? No. Was it a castle? No. An embroidery created under the orders of Bishop Odo, that's his half-brother or brother-in-law, I can't remember which one, which depicts the Norman invasion of England. That's the one. It's really famous. It tells us, so that's how we get a lot of our information about the Battle of Hastings and the time before and after it. Excuse me. So, yeah, it's really famous. You have to bear in mind that it was made by the Normans, so it's obviously going to be pro-Norman and anti-Anglo-Saxon and anti-Harold Godwinson. But that doesn't mean it's useless. We can still learn a lot from it, just bearing in mind that it is slightly biased towards the Normans. So that's number 7. House Carl. The act of crowning a king or queen? No. William's destruction? No. The hierarchy? No. A wooden castle, no. Elite soldiers carried an axe, yeah. The housecarls were the main elite soldiers of Harold Godwinson's army. Coronation, the act of crowning a king or queen, yeah, that's the same today. So when, I don't know how many years ago it was now, 1950-something, Queen Elizabeth II, our current queen, she had a coronation. When she passes away and Charles becomes king, he will have a coronation. So it's just when you put the crown on their head and say, you're now the king or queen. Harrowing of the North, William's Destruction of the North. Yep, that was question on the starter. Motte and Bailey Castle, a wooden earth castle. Yeah. And then feudalism is the hierarchy introduced. Remember, it was that pyramid where it goes up and down and everyone gets a bit and gives a bit, if that makes sense. Everyone gets a bit and they give a bit. So people got land and gave something back for it. Cool, well done if you got them. If not, don't worry. Just make sure you've got the correct answers down and we can move on. 15 minutes in already. I've talked for far too long. We'll skip that. I don't think we need to do that. Yeah, we'll skip it. If you want to have a go at those questions, guys, you can. They were just sort of an extra challenge I was going to give you if we were in lesson. I thought I'd include it here, but I don't want to spend all day with you guys wasting your time, talking about Sutton Hoo and the elite Norman soldiers. If you want to do them to push yourself, great, love it. If you don't and you just want to get through the lesson and do your other work, that's cool. So we'll move forward. Right, this is the main part of the lesson. Remember, the question we're answering is how much did the Normans change England? It's not a question of did they, because they definitely did. But imagine there's a sliding scale, and at one end, I'm imagining it, in front of me now. On the left, there's no change. Basically, the Norman England and Anglo-Saxon England is like the same country. There's tiny differences. And on the right of this line, or this scale, is everything changed. It's not even recognisable. There are no similarities between Anglo-Saxon England and Norman. And you've got to decide where you think you decide. That doesn't make any sense, sir. I'll rephrase it. You've got to decide how much change you think occurred in Anglo-Saxon England into Norman England. So how much did Anglo-Saxon England change when the Normans came over? So in front of you are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 boxes. And what is required is, again, in class you'd have these in front of you and you'd shade them or colour them. What needs to happen is you need to decide whether they show change or continuity. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to colour the change box blue and the continuity. Actually, no, I'll tell you what makes more sense. We'll put change as green because green means go or move. And we'll put red as continuity, which means stop and no movement. So by continuity, I mean things continue. Continue. Everything stays the same, it continues. Change, it changes. You've got to read each box. You've got to work out, does it describe change from Anglo-Saxon to Norman England, or does it describe continuity, things staying the same? So let's do the first one together and see what we get. Whereas 105, apologies, that's a typo. That 5, the percentage thing on your computer is on the 5. It's just a whereas 10%. It's not 105. Let's cross that out. 10%. Whereas 10% of Anglo-Saxons were slaves, Normans believed slavery was wrong and freed slaves. So the Anglo-Saxons had slaves, the Normans believed slavery was wrong. So is that the same or is it different? It's obviously different because the Anglo-Saxons didn't believe in slaves, the Anglo-Saxons did believe in slaves, and the Normans didn't. Very simple. So that's a change. Now, how are you going to do this? I would advise you to just put it in your own words. So the second one, we'll figure out how to put it in your own words in a second. This one's quite easy. The building of stone castles and cathedrals was one of the biggest changes. I emphasise that word for a reason. Areas of towns and villages were often cleared away, and these are a powerful symbol of Norman power. All you can put was maybe the Normans built loads of stone castles and cathedrals, and that would be sound. That's obviously changed because the word change is in there. I've crossed out the word, but you know what I mean. So that's obviously changed. So I'll put green. In the boxes where there's change. All I want you to do now, guys, is you can either do it as a table, so you could go, and you put change, and you can put continuity, and you can decide for each one, you could put it in your own words, so you could put change, you put the castles, and you could put slaves, and then the same for continuity. Or you can write out each one, then colour code it, or write next to it in brackets, like change with continuity. You can choose. So have a go at that, please, guys. I'll give you a few minutes. You've got probably 5, 6, 7 minutes to have a go at this. So take your time, don't rush it. Pause the video. Have a go for me, please. Alright. Thank you for having a go at that. We'll go through, we'll mark. If you get them wrong, just put them in the right category. It's not a problem. I'm not too concerned. Right. This one, the economic devastation of the North was obviously a massive change. So we know that one's a change. In addition, Scandinavian trade with England, which flourished under the Saxons, was cut off. So there's two changes here, really. The North was devastated by the harrying of the North, and the economy, the money up there wasn't much anymore. And also, under the Anglo-Saxons, when it says Scandinavian trade, it basically means the Vikings. Anglo-Saxons and Vikings traded a lot because the Vikings sort of invaded England and they traded goods. The Normans said, we're not having that, we're not going to trade with the Vikings, we're going to trade more with France and that part of Europe and Germany. So another change is trade. Hopefully you've written more down than just a one word, Avron. This is just to make it easier and faster. The fjord was removed and replaced with a night service, 40 days a year, unpaid. This was part of the feudal system and ensured William a military force. So the fjord was removed and replaced. So there was still a night service or a military force, but it was different. So the fjord replaced. That's obviously a change. Definitely beginning to see a pattern. Next one, the Saxon geld tax continued under William. The only difference was that William levied it more often to increase his wealth. So if it continued, it's continuity. So the geld tax was continuity. The only difference was William levied it more, which means he asked for the geld tax. So instead of it being you pay your geld tax once a year, he said, right, you're going to pay it every 6 months. Or something, I don't know. Something like that. There were over 4,000 thanes in Anglo-Saxon England who were replaced by Norman vassals who owed tax and military service to tenants-in-chief. So that's obviously changed. The thanes were replaced. Might run out of space. There we go. Life in villages would have continued in much the same way after the invasion. Lives were still dominated by harvest, and the living standards would have stayed the same. So the living standards, life in villages is the same. So another continuity is life in villages. So the life of the average peasant they wouldn't really have noticed much difference with the change in ruler. Feudalism reduced the number of peasant freemen. Peasants were now much more dependent on their lord. So that's a change. So we can say there that less free peasants. They were now, because of the feudal system, they now owed their lord for their land. So they couldn't be like the Ceorl back in the Anglo-Saxon days, if you remember that. The Ceorl was the Anglo-Saxon peasant, but he was rich enough to sort of pick and choose who he worked for and demand better pay. Now that changed because you sort of lived on your lord's land and you owed him because he allowed you to work in his land, so you couldn't really pick and choose. Norman change was greatest where it related to gaining control of England's economy and reducing the chance of rebellion. So that's obviously a change. We'll go on to the next page. We'll do another change. We won't need another continuity side, but we'll put it in anyway. Continuity, and this one was more control over the economy for the king. So what number are we on? 7. King controls economy more. There we go. The royal household would have stayed much the same under the Normans and Saxons. Members of the royal household would have changed, but their administrative and advisory role would have stayed much the same. Basically means the people who helped the king run the country. So basically, the people who helped the king run the country, they changed in who they were, but their jobs were the same. So a continuity is the royal household. It just means sort of who lives with the king and helps him sort stuff out. And last but not least, tenants-in-chief, barons, bishops, abbots replaced earls. They had a lot less land, less power, and owed allegiance to William. So that is another change. Earls replaced by the tenants-in-chief. And these new people had less power than the earls. Cool. Right. So as you can see, we've got 8 on the change and 3 on the continuity. And we're going to end, as we approach 25 minutes, with this question. Now, usually, if you've done one of these questions before for me, you will know that usually you do 3 paragraphs and a conclusion, and it takes you about half an hour. I'm not going to ask that. I'm going to ask for just 1 paragraph. But it has to be set out in a very specific way. Move this up. So the Normans vastly changed in England. I'm saying this is Mr. Baker's view. The Normans, they vastly changed. By vastly, I mean they changed it a lot. how far do you agree? You need to decide whether, having done that task and having your table, whether you think the Normans changed England a lot. Now, the fact that there's 8 changes and 3 continuity suggests to me that yes, they did, but you might think different. You've got 3 choices, or in basic, no, you've got 2. You can either agree with me or disagree. And I want you to decide now, do you agree that the Normans changed England a lot, or do you disagree and you think they didn't change it a lot? So decide now. Your first sentence, you might want to write this down with me if you want, is going to be, I'm going to leave a gap there. Now in there, you can put agree or disagree, depending on what your opinion is. I agree with this statement. You've got to put that in any question which asks you, how far do you agree? If you do not tell the examiner how much you agree, then you are not answering the question. You will get very few marks. This is usually out of 16. Usually. But that's if you did 3 paragraphs and a conclusion. I'm only asking you to do 1. So, say I agree or disagree with this statement, based on if you agree with the idea that the Normans changed England a lot. You have then got to argue it using a PEE paragraph. You know, we love PEE in history. So, let's say I agree. I think most of you probably will. You've said, I agree with this statement that the Normans vastly changed England. You've now got to pick your point. So, it can be any of these on this side of your table. Any on the change. So, let's say slaves. And you make the point. One reason for this... Don't write this down yet, because you're going to do your own in a minute. There you go. You've put a point in, but you've not provided any evidence. You said, look, slavery was different. Now, in history, you can't just make a point without having evidence, because the examiner, or me, is going to quite rightly say, well, hang on, you've made your point, but what proof have you got? You could just be making it up. So then you've got to back up your point. In this example paragraph, which you're going to do a different one after, one reason for this is slaves. What evidence have you got? You could say Normans believed slavery was wrong. Well, okay, you've given me some proof. It's obviously that the Normans had their view on slaves, but explain to me, why is that different from the Anglo-Saxons? You've got to explain your evidence. You can't just throw a fact at me and expect me to understand what's going on. Pretend I don't know what's going on, and you've got to then explain that fact. You then explain it by saying, the Anglo-Saxons had 10% of their people as slaves. This shows a big change. And there, you've now got that obvious difference. You've made your point, so you said, I agree with this statement. And I'm like, okay, cool. What's your argument? You start your argument. One reason for this is the slaves. And I said, okay, what proof have you got? You've said Normans believed slavery was wrong. And I'm like, okay, cool. Why is that different? And then you've explained the Anglo-Saxons had 10% of their people as slaves. This shows a big change. All I want you to do, guys, is you should have already at this point done that bit. You just need to do this bit yourself. You need to do a PEE. Choose any of them, any of your changes. And what I'll do is, and then obviously your extra facts are in here. So if you do need to get the extra facts, so you make your point about the castles or the fjord or the thanes or the trade or the peasants, and I need your evidence, you can just rewind the video and go back to where you can see this screen. I'm going to leave it there so you can see what I've done. And then when you've done that, you're finished and we're done with the lesson for today. 29 minutes in. I said it'd be a short lesson today. I obviously lied once more. So thank you for taking part in the lesson and doing the work. As I say, keep your work safe or upload it, so I've got records of who is completing the work. And I am very grateful to those of you getting it done nice and quick and uploading it and being nice and organised. And it is going to, set you up really well for when we go back into school. So cheers for, I'm being told now that after another minute, I run out of time to record. So I actually breached the limit of this app. But thank you for watching. Hope you're all keeping well. And drop us an email if you're struggling with anything and I'll sort it out. But yeah, cheers. Adios.